Yes. Yes. Very good. My name's Mark. And that's all I'm going to tell you about myself.
All right.
No, I don't have a lot of stuff behind my name, in front of my name. But as we learned yesterday, this is what? This is for the network, by the network. So please don't look at me like I'm the talking head or the guru. Somehow I'm the subject matter expert in here. When we went, it was a little bit of a brutal exercise, but you know, when we went across the entire room, when we started yesterday and everybody introduced themselves, it was very apparent to me that we've got everything. And even in this room, we've got everything from like Stephanie, right? Like total newbie to, oh, I've just off and on been doing it for 30 years. Well, that's not fair. But anyways, we're calling this Disaster 101 or kind of the intro. And we're going to go pretty basic. I mean, this is not super high level. So if for whatever reason, if you're like, oh my gosh, I already know all this, I am not going to be offended if you just get up and walk out and go to another session. Okay? And also, again, I'm not a talking head. This is not a monologue. Let's allow this to be a dialogue. If you have questions, if you have comments, speak up. You don't even have to raise your hand. If you want to be polite, that's great. But let's do a lot of back and forth. Okay? So go ahead. Do I have a clicker?
You do have a clicker, sir.
Okay. So today, this is kind of just the quick overview, what we're looking at. Definition of disaster, common types of disaster, disaster cycle, its victims, a little bit on the psychology of disaster, disaster assistance, and then just getting involved. Right? So I thought we'd start out with just a little video. I know we all kind of like those, so, well.
Well, in September it rained several days. It didn't really alarm me until the morning of the actual flood and found that there were so many streets around everywhere that we couldn't make it to school. Then in a little bit, the water came up and kind of came through the wall. So we decided that we probably needed to think about getting out of the house. So my son had put our cat in the upstairs bathroom. So we had to go upstairs to get the cat. And at that time, the water was probably just maybe ankle deep in the house. And the amount of time it took us to go up the stairs and get her, and we came back and got to about right here, and I said, oh, we're not going back down because the water had risen that much. So we go back upstairs and open a window and yell for neighbors to come and help. When my son and I came out the front door, it was pretty high, it was pretty scary. I think I was in such a shock that I couldn't think of anything except I just want to get out. The water got so high that the mulch from my flower beds came up into here. Everything it was just like somebody had dropped a bomb inside the house. Everything was just destroyed. It's also personal. And just things like that you know you can't keep it, it's ruined, just throw it away. And to have to look at it and say, I know I've got to let it go, and they're just things, but they're my things. For the cleanup, we had a lot of volunteers, and we were very careful. Everybody had to wear gloves and protective gear because all that stuff's contaminated. As far as the house itself, all the drywall, all the contents taken out. I did not have flood insurance because I was not in floodplain, so we were told we didn't need it. Things are a lot more difficult because of no insurance. I'm paying a mortgage plus having to pay for someplace else to live. Going forward, when I move back into the house, I will have flood insurance. I won't take another chance.
Why are we here? Yeah. National Flood Insurance Program. It's a great program. But we're here. Life happens, right? Crap happens. Stuff happens. What'd she say? It was pretty big. It was pretty scary. Not me. Not now. Not here. Not us. We all have that feeling, that sense, that attitude. But we've got to stop and realize and recognize that stuff does happen, and we need to be serious about some of this. Very quick, basic definition of disaster. A sudden great misfortune, especially something as a flood or tornado that happens suddenly and causes much suffering or loss. Now check this out. I love the etymology of this word. So you break it down. You have two parts, dis and then kind of astro from the early Italian dis, like that's the negative, the no, not, none. And then astro, and astro's is translated star, from Latin astrum, star or light. And so think about that for a minute. Disaster, no light. No light. When you're hit with the disaster, it gets real dark in a hurry. And you go to a really dark place. You're discouraged. God, how am I going to do this one? How are we going to do this one? You know? And so, one of the actually, let's do this real fast. I love this. Let me share this with you. Give light and the darkness will disappear of itself. Last couple years when we were here at this AIDE conference, at each session when you went through, you were given a tchotchke of some kind, like a little token, so that when you left, you would remember the session and what was talked about in that session. And they said, don't give tchotchkes this year. But I'm going to do it anyways. Okay, so I went to Walmart yesterday. And, of course, Halloween, right? So they had all these glow sticks. And I was actually going to do candles. They might have some policy against like us, light the place on fire. But anyways, everybody take one of these, okay? And just go ahead and crack it open, and then carry it in your pocket. Just make sure everybody gets one. I think there's enough. Crack those suckers. I mean, it takes a minute.
It takes a little bit. Push harder than you think. Now turn it over. Do the other side now. Opposite side. Okay, I'm not going to.
Thank you.
Are we good? Wayne, you gotta get on it.
Stronger fingers. Thank you.
Okay. Now, hey, I'm not trying to scare everybody, but so I'm seeing some lights. Now they're not real bright. I'm even going to do this. Okay. Hey, that's not much of a light, is it? But gall dang, it helps, doesn't it? It helps. And I think a lot of the time when we're in disaster, we often come at it going, well, what can I really do? What can I contribute? My agency, we don't have a big staff, or we don't have a ton of resources, and what's my part to play? I don't know if I, have a lot to offer my community. But the fact of the matter is, when all of us together light those things up, man, it's cool. It really is cool. And we can begin to really serve our fellow man and make a difference. Let's all just kind of hold your light sticks in the air, and let's all together, kind of in unison, say this disaster prayer together. Holy One, you are our comfort and strength in times of sudden disaster, crisis, or chaos. Surround us now with your grace and peace through storm or earthquake, fire or flood. By your Spirit, lift up those who have fallen, sustain those who work to rescue or rebuild, and fill us with the hope of your new creation through Jesus Christ, our rock and redeemer. Amen. Okay, moving on. So what we often talk about in the disaster world is this disaster cycle, in the sense that it's never just one event. We often think of the hour, the day that the tornado or the flood or the hurricane happened, but it's not just a one-time thing. It's a process or a wheel that we kind of are always on, and we're always moving around this cycle. So the event happens, but then we're either what? Responding to, recovering from, preparing for, or mitigating against that disaster or the next disaster, right? And some of the preparedness and the mitigation comes from lessons learned. Oh boy, let's not do that again, right? And then the responding to and recovering from is the, oh crap, we weren't prepared, or we were caught flat-footed, and we need to do something to try to get us back up on our feet again and whole. And so there's a lot of things that are in here today, but this is one. I would really like it if just challenge yourself to take this away. It's a cycle. It's not just a singular event, right? And we need to constantly be thinking about, talking about what we're doing and being active in that. Here's just a couple of pictures. We've got the 4 pictures sort of representing the 4, right? The preparedness, the mitigation, the response, the recovery. Can anybody guess which is which? Okay, no. All right, Garth. Garth. Which is this top left? Recovery. Okay. Like rebuilding would fall under the recovery phase. Okay. Go. That top right. Response. The bottom left. Preparedness, and then the storm shelter would fall under mitigation. Very good. Okay. Carrie, why don't you read this definition to us?
Response, sometimes called disaster relief. Response is predominantly focused on immediate and short-term needs after a disaster in order to save lives, reduce health impacts, ensure public safety, and meet the basic subsistence needs of the people affected.
Okay. That's where we often focus, right? It's always the response. Who's giving it, handing out the bottles of water? Who's doing the mass care, the immediate sheltering after people have been displaced because of a hurricane or something like that. Recover. Who's got a big voice? Go for it, Chris.
The restoration of facilities, livelihoods, and living conditions of the disaster-affected communities, including efforts to reduce disaster risk factors.
Okay, so that would be, again, like that rebuilding. Next one. Oh, here, let's hang out for just a second. So this was the definition of recovery. Oftentimes in recovery, we talk about the rule of 10, which basically states that the event happens, and then what happens? You've got your dedicated, kind of professional first responders going out. Fire, EMS, police, those kind of guys. And however long that takes for them to kind of stabilize life, secure a perimeter, do some of that basic kind of initial search and rescue. That might take a day. That might take 3 days. Who knows? If you take that number and multiply it by 10, that gives you a good idea on how long that response phase of the disaster is going to take. So it might take, so if you've got step 1 here takes 3 days, you might have 30 days of relief and response work being done by the likes of the Salvation Army, American Red Cross, et cetera, et cetera. If you take that number, 30, times 10, that takes us out to what? 300. That gives you a good ballpark number as to the length of the recovery phase. And so that's a big number. For just a one-time, maybe a one-day kind of a flash flood or a tornado, we may have 300 days, close to a year of recovery work on our hands. Okay, mitigate. Who's got another big voice? Go for it. Mitigation.
The lessening or limitation of the adverse impacts of hazards and related disasters. The adverse impacts of hazards often cannot be prevented fully, but their scale or severity can be substantially lessened by various strategies and actions.
Okay, very good. So, again, those initial pictures I put up there was a storm shelter. That would be a great example of mitigation. And then finally, preparedness. Go for it. David.
Preparedness. Actions taken within the context of disaster risk. Disaster risk management to effectively anticipate, respond to, and recover from the impacts of likely, imminent, or current hazard events or conditions.
Actually, that definition the other three made a lot of sense to me. That one doesn't make quite as much sense. But just that we're covering a lot of different things in preparedness. It's a little bit of a catch-all. We can talk about individual preparedness. We can talk about agency preparedness, community preparedness, but just actions taken to effectively anticipate, respond, recover from. Okay, this is a really cool. Some research has been done just to say that for every dollar invested in disaster preparedness can prevent $7 worth of disaster-related, economic loss. So I put in $1 today. It's going to save me $6 down the road, maybe, hopefully. After the event. Okay, very quickly, types of disaster. You guys are very knowledgeable. We don't have to go into all of the different types of disaster, but just that they can be natural in nature. Things like a winter storm, snow, ice. It could also be man-made, something like that. If you guys are interested, so I really didn't introduce myself, but my name's Mark. I am from Oklahoma City. In Oklahoma, I can give you our big four, and those are tornadoes, fires, floods, and then winter storm, snow, and ice. Do you guys know? If you don't know, I would encourage you to maybe go home and see kind of what your big ones are, and you can pull this straight off the FEMA website. And so I just pulled up declarations for just this last year, and so it's a little bit hard to see, but we've got Hurricane Matthew. Obviously, that was the recent big one in North Carolina, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina. And then earlier this year, who's from Louisiana? Okay, we had the flooding that was nasty, and then so these were all natural, right? But then we get down to Michigan. Earlier this year, what was that? Yeah. The water crisis, the contaminated water. So that's a very different kind of disaster. And then Missouri, we had at the very beginning of the year, right after the new year, a lot of the flooding and all that, which was gross. Okay, very quickly. So again, this is a dialogue. This is for the network, by the network. I want to give us a chance to kind of just exercise and talk together. We just kind of talked about, just very quickly, some of the different types of disasters and or hazards. So here's an exercise. There's about 25 of us in the room, and I've got some flip chart sheets that I'm going to stick all over the room. Because I've got 5, let's do like groups of 5, okay? And in each group, quickly just pick somebody to talk and somebody to kind of take notes. As a group, talk about your hazard and write down specific steps, activities that you could take for your hazard in the areas of, again, response, recovery, preparedness, and mitigation. Okay, so